Hey folks, this is your ticker guy coming at you from wonderful Niceville. I gotta have a little fun here. You know, I'm the video and still image dude that likes to play with things deconstructor. Yeah, we got one here that's been floating around the web for a while. And that is this alleged UFO that was shot by a Mavic drone. So these drones, folks, I've played with them a little bit. I know a little bit about them in terms of their video footage and such. But here is the footage in question. This is right at about, let's see, let me find my timeline here, 1:48, thereabouts. This is the 29th frame in there. So we're gonna kind of go in here. This, by the way, this is a 60 frame per second. It's 59.99p proportional, and I am shooting. I'm operating in my editor here at where I'm only getting a 30 frame per second rate. So the way this works is that I get all 60, but my timing is 2 frames for every tick, because the way that your output works is 30 frames per second, unless I'm intentionally going for slow motion. And why is that? Because that's what your video output looks like on a monitor. So this is where this little thing first shows up in the frame right here as I'm circling. And why am I making such a thing about timing and everything? It's going to become apparent in a minute. We're just going to go through here. And by the way, full credit to the guys who did this. This is really not a bad little piece. But, yeah, so let's go ahead and we'll step through here at slower than you originally saw. All right, but there's the whooshy thing, right? And we'll back it up. All right, now notice a couple of things. There's a ridge line back here, which is where this thing appears to come from. But what happens is this thing is on edge and executes right there a banked turn. Now, when I first saw this video, of course, I saw it at full speed, and my initial impression was I was looking at lens flare. That is, the light gets into the camera lens, and when it does, it bounces around inside, and that often produces something that looks a lot like some kind of an object. But it really isn't. It's an artifact of the camera. And I get these sometimes when I'm doing still photography, but with video, if the camera's moving, and in this case, of course, being it's on a drone, it will be, the artifact that it produces looks like the thing that it produces is moving. Of course, then, when I bring it into my video editor and I start looking at it and I see what clearly looks like an aerodynamic banked turn, I say, okay, that's not what I saw. All right. But this aerodynamic banked turn is important for a reason. It means that we are dealing with an object, purportedly anyway, a supposed object, that obeys the laws of physics. Our physics, not somebody else's physics. Yeah, all right. So, and then I'm going to start analyzing here, and I'll tell you why I've got issues with this thing and think this is just a load of hooey. All right, so this thing is on a knife edge and losing altitude. It rotates 90 degrees. It is nearly vertical here. It rotates 90 degrees. It is a lifting body. Because it is producing lift, it has no visible means of acceleration or other travel. And then it goes whooshy over the top of these trees and goes out of the frame. All right. These cameras are wide-angle cameras. We do not know what the range is between the DJI Mavic and this tree. All right. Range is important in this because with range, I can calculate speed. Why? Because I have a 60th of a second between these frames. All right, secondly, I've got a lot of motion blur here, and the shutter is opening and closing every 60th of a second. This also means, however, that because I am getting this, all right, every 60th of a second, I can give you a pretty good idea that there's something really hinky going on here because I have no 100% opacity anywhere in this image. And I should here to here, right? Because here, well, let's see, I didn't want to do that. There we go. Okay. So here's my cursor, the beginning and end, right? And you'll notice that if I go back a little further, all right, we put the cursor here, again, beginning to end of that frame. Where's the 100% opacity in this? There should be some because the shutter was open during the entire time for some part of this thing's passage during that 60th of a second. And yet the shutter was open 1/60th of a second. You know, we know this because that's the frame rate. That's a problem. All right, now the second problem we got is that when it is approximately even with this tree and shrub, the opaque part of it, this is not present during the entire thing. This is not present during the entire thing. So this is motion blur artifact. The size of this alleged object is approximately equal to the size of this shrub. All right, now how far away is the shrub? I don't know. But let us assume that the shrub is approximately, well, what do you think, a couple 100 feet, 150 feet, 100 feet? It matters, and the reason it matters is the thing covered, let's say that this distance here is 200 feet. It covered 200 feet in 3/60ths of a second. In other words, about a 20th of a second. A 20th of a second. And at 60 miles an hour, you would cover 88 feet in a whole second. Okay? So, I covered here 200 feet in a 20th of a second. So 200 feet, 20 seconds, 4,000, okay, means that this thing was traveling, calculation's accurate, about 2,700 miles an hour. Well past the speed of sound. Now, there is a very serious problem with that, folks, because this thing was allegedly silent. If it was silent and it was traveling at well past the speed of sound, it would not be silent, because things that travel past the speed of sound produce sonic booms. In fact, a bullet produces a sonic boom. All right. So, I've got several problems here. I've got, again, I'm guessing here at range. All right, I wish I had a way to tell you, okay, how far away is that shrub? Because if I knew how far away the shrub was, and for example, how far away this tree is, or this one, because that's about, let's say, about there, right? And then about here. If I had this delta, or if I just had one distance, I could give you a pretty accurate speed reading, but the point being that the speed depicted almost certainly is beyond 760 miles an hour, which is the speed of sound at sea level. And at that speed, that velocity, this thing would be making quite a bit of noise. It's not. It would be making noise irrespective of its own propulsion plant, which, by the way, there's no wake turbulence being displayed here either, and this thing's pretty close to the ground. These trees are not very high. They're not very tall. This thing is quite close to the top of this one. And then I've got the opacity problem. So I've got all these things and I put them together. And what do I say? My analysis says this thing is a very clever composite. What is a composite? It is two pieces of video that are put together. One of them is shot with a background of some kind. Maybe this is the drone itself that was shot behind a green screen or other static background that is of one color, and therefore you can drop it. And the reason that you don't have complete opacity here on this when it was overlaid is because if you do, the imperfections in the background start to show up. This, by the way, this technique is not only common, it's not a scam. It's used all the time to do things like make your weather report every night. The weatherman isn't actually shooting in front of a gigantic monitor in the studio. He is shooting in front of a green screen. And this is why he doesn't have a certain color on, whatever the color of that background is, which is then filtered out in post-processing. And in fact, Vegas Video can do this kind of thing very easily. You can do composites. So that's my judgment, folks. This is very clever, not quite clever enough, because we've got a craft that obviously obeys our laws of physics, as is evidenced by the bank turn. It's quite small. And therefore, little green men would be kind of a problem, because I don't think they'd fit in that thing. And then the other problem is it generates no wake turbulence. It appears, if my guesses are anywhere in the ballpark, it's allegedly moving at well past the speed of sound, and yet it is producing no noise nor any wake turbulence, both of which would be in extreme evidence at that kind of velocity. So, folks, very clever composite, but not, I repeat, a UFO. Have an awesome day, and I hope you enjoyed this.